Billboard praised Dreamers in 2022. So why is American media pretending it never happened? There was a time when the world seemed to pause at the sound of Jungkook's voice. It was November 2022, the desert air of Qatar shimmering under golden lights as millions around the world tuned in to watch the opening ceremony of the FIFA World Cup. The young man standing at the center of the stage wasn't just a K-pop idol anymore. He was the face of a global moment. Dreamers became more than a song that night. It was an anthem that transcended borders, an unexpected bridge between cultures, and a symbol of what modern music could become when sincerity met scale. Billboard praised it. American critics called it a vision of global harmony. Even those who had never heard of BTS before that day were mesmerized by the power of one voice that carried pride, youth, and the quiet courage of a nation. Yet, 3 years later, as Jungkook's Dreamers quietly crossed 500 million streams on Spotify, a milestone that only a handful of global artists achieve, there was no celebration, no retrospective, no flashback articles from the very media that once called him the future of world pop. Silence replaced applause. American outlets that once rushed to cover every BTS headline, every social post, every hint of solo activity, now scroll past his name as if it were a ghost from a time they'd rather forget. The irony is impossible to ignore. Jungkook didn't disappear. BTS didn't fade away. Their military service, beginning in 2022 and concluding in mid-2025, was a pause in performance, not a disappearance of influence. Even as they fulfilled their national duty, the world continued to listen. Songs streamed, records broke, fan bases grew, and the cultural footprint of BTS deepened in ways statistics can't measure. When Jungkook ranked number 4 in the top 100 most handsome faces of K-pop 2025, it wasn't nostalgia, it was relevance. The fans never left. The world never stopped caring. But the Western media? They looked away, and it begs the question, why? Why erase a moment that was once celebrated as a defining chapter in modern pop history? Why pretend that Dreamers, the song that lit up the world's largest sporting event and united people across languages, never happened? Perhaps it's easier to celebrate an artist when he fits neatly into the Western narrative of fame. Perhaps it's easier to treat K-pop as a passing trend rather than a permanent revolution. Because if Jungkook's success endures, if Dreamers continues to thrive years later, then it proves something uncomfortable for the American industry. That dominance in music no longer depends on Western validation. The Western press has always had a peculiar relationship with BTS. When the group stormed through the Billboard charts, they were impossible to ignore. When their speeches at the United Nations inspired millions, the headlines were glowing. But the moment their success became consistent, the coverage became cautious, as if acknowledging them too much would disturb the unspoken hierarchy of pop culture. Dreamers was different. It wasn't just another hit song, it was a declaration of independence. It showed that a Korean artist could stand on one of the biggest stages in the world without relying on Western production, labels, or approval. It was, in every sense, a challenge to the system, and perhaps that's why the silence feels deliberate. Billboard once called the performance a triumph of global unity. Rolling Stone featured it in their Best Moments of the World Cup. But now, even when the song hits another massive milestone, the same outlets remain quiet. New artists like AHOF, a rookie group whose debut in 2025 shocked the industry with 369,850 first-week sales, now dominate headlines. Their rise is impressive, but the narrative is unsettling. Western outlets are eager to anoint new K-pop acts as the next big thing, while conveniently ignoring the legacy that made such breakthroughs possible. Without Jungkook, without BTS, there would be no AHOF. Without the global momentum of Dreamers, the world might still be treating K-pop as a niche phenomenon. Yet those connections are rarely acknowledged. Behind the industry's amnesia lies a deeper truth about fame in the digital era. Legacy threatens novelty. Jungkook's Dreamers is proof that art doesn't fade when the cameras stop rolling. It endures in hearts, in memories, in playlists that never stop playing. It doesn't rely on headlines to exist. But the Western media, obsessed with newness, seems unable to celebrate consistency. They thrive on the rise, but not on the reign. For them, success is interesting only when it's unexpected. Once it becomes inevitable, they turn the page. Still, what they fail to understand is that Jungkook's story isn't over. With BTS members completing their military service and preparing for a long-awaited reunion, the silence may soon become impossible to maintain. The world will remember again because ARMY never forgot. In online spaces, fans continue to act as historians of their own era. They archive, document, and revive what the media chooses to ignore. Every anniversary of Dreamers becomes a digital festival. Fan accounts trend hashtags like #RememberDreamers and #JungkookLegacy, filling timelines with memories of that night in Qatar when one voice echoed across continents. The power of fandom has transformed from mere support into cultural preservation. Perhaps the most haunting part of this silence is what it reveals about control. Dreamers was a song that didn't belong to any one nation. It wasn't American, Korean, or Qatari, it was universal. It represented everything the modern entertainment industry claims to stand for: inclusion, diversity, and global connection. And yet, when the moment passed, those same principles evaporated. It was easier to forget than to accept that the boundaries of power had shifted permanently. Now, in 2025, as Jungkook's face graces the top rankings once again, as new idols rise in the shadow of his influence, the omission feels almost like a quiet protest. A refusal to admit that the balance of global pop has changed forever. But art doesn't wait for permission to exist. Dreamers keeps playing. Children in countries far from Seoul still sing its lyrics. Stadiums still echo with its melody. And whether or not American media wants to acknowledge it, Jungkook's voice remains part of the world's collective memory. History has a strange way of correcting itself. The louder the silence, the stronger the echo that follows. Maybe that's why fans remain so fiercely protective of Dreamers, because they understand that remembering is an act of rebellion. The world saw Jungkook's performance. The world heard the song. The world felt the pride of a nation that had waited decades to be seen not as imitators, but as innovators. That cannot be erased, no matter how many headlines disappear. When people ask why the American press no longer talks about Dreamers, perhaps the answer is simple: because it no longer fits the story they want to tell. A story where global success must pass through Western approval. But Jungkook's story doesn't. It belongs to everyone who ever believed in music that connects rather than divides. And as Dreamers continues its quiet, unstoppable climb, past 500 million streams, into the hearts of another generation, it stands as living proof that legacy doesn't need permission. Billboard may have praised it once, but the world still does. And no matter how hard anyone tries to pretend it never happened, the truth remains. It did. It changed everything. And the dream it sparked never really ended. IT begins like all great mysteries do, not with noise, but with silence. The kind of silence that doesn't happen by accident. A silence that feels orchestrated, as if someone somewhere decided that a story should quietly fade, that a moment too powerful for comfort should simply be forgotten. But art doesn't vanish just because the media stops talking about it, and no artist proves that more than Jungkook of BTS. In November 2022, the world's eyes were fixed on Qatar. The FIFA World Cup, the grandest sporting event on the planet, had just begun, and the opening ceremony was about to introduce a performer no one expected to see on that stage. A young man from South Korea whose name alone carried the weight of a generation, Jungkook. The stadium roared. Billions watched from screens around the globe. The lights dimmed, the beat rose, and suddenly, that unmistakable voice broke through the air. Look who we are. We are the Dreamers.